right, welcome to For the Glory of God and Kings. I am Travis Finley, and this is Reading the Bible for the First Time Again. We are talking about biblical interpretation, and we are coming to the conclusion that reading the Bible is not as straightforward as you might like to think. There is more going on in the text of Scripture than what's on the surface. The story there is true, referring to historical events, historical people, historical places, but its purpose in a literary presentation is what we are after. And we're trying to slow down and look at things that we are familiar with and look at them in a different way, with our head tilted and our eyes squinted and maybe our glasses pulled down a little bit so that we can get a different perspective as we're looking at it. And I want to encourage you to think expansively, to think elaborately, to think outside of the box, which means that you get yourself uncomfortable with challenging the way that you normally think about the Scriptures. And I'm going to point out a couple of things here in Genesis chapter 2 that I want us to think about, depending on how long I'm able to do these. It's not like I'm going to die anytime soon, but I'm just saying I'm not sure how long these are going to take, and whenever I'm going to get to these points that I'm trying to make. Translation is a big issue for me, because the translation from the original language into English is going to affect the way you interpret the text. And I think that there are a lot of places where we could do a better job at trying to stay with the theology of the text rather than the idea that the translators might have at the time, what they think is going on in the text. One of the things that we saw was in Genesis 1 that the word eretz in Hebrew means land, but it's translated in two different ways in chapter 1. It's translated as earth and it's translated as land. I think that it should be translated as earth for consistency's sake, and then we're able to make the decisions for ourselves. Okay. When we're looking at Genesis 1, we have two primary verbs that God engages in. He creates and he makes. He creates and he makes. It's interesting to go back into that and see what it is that he makes and what it is that he creates. They're two different words in the Hebrew. When we get to the creation of Eve, we have a third word. It's not the same word. It's not create. It's not make. It's actually the word build. God built Eve from Adam. So think about the implications of that. Think about the weird, bizarre. Think about being the translator. Hey, Joe, we got a new word over here. We haven't seen it before. This is only Genesis 2. God created the world, and he created the sea monsters, and he created man, but here he's building Eve. What do you do with that? What does that mean? My translation, the New American Standard, says that he fashioned. Fashioned is an interesting concept. You might understand. You might think of a whittler picking up a piece of wood and fashioning out of that some artwork, right? But the next time in the Bible that the word built is used is in reference to Cain after he was ejected out of the land. And verse 17 in chapter 4. Cain had relations with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch, and he built a city. It's the same word. I'm arguing theologically that we need to make that connection. We need to see the connection between building a city and building the woman, and ask the question, what does that mean? Okay, what does that even come close to meaning? That Eve is built out of the side of Adam. Okay. Another issue in translation in this story is the word rib. The word in the Hebrew is not rib. It does not refer to one of the bones in Adam's body. Again, the technicality is important. I think it says that God took one of Adam's sides. He took one of his sides. That's the word. It's not rib, it's side. And he took one of them, which means there's more than one. So what does that mean? The next time we see the word side, it's in reference to the ark that Noah builds. He builds it, the sides of it is this, the side of it is that. So it's an architectural term. Architectural term. Adam is cut in two, and one of his sides is built into something else. We have to ask those questions. What is going on with this text? One of the other important terms in this passage is the term that God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. A deep sleep. The other times that this term is used, it's used in reference to Abraham when he goes into a trance. It is used of Jonah when he falls asleep so deeply in the ship that he could not be woken up for all of the storm that was going on. And then also in the story of Jael and Sisera in Judges, that he falls into a deep sleep. The idea here is explained by James Jordan as a word that means to be so close to death that you're basically dead. Okay? So close to death that you're basically dead. So that Adam is basically put to death, and then out of that death comes life. He is put to death, and when he comes back in, he is multiplied. He is now two, whatever that means. Okay, we have to talk about these things. I just thought of right now the allusion that Jesus makes in John chapter 12. Unless a seed falls to the earth and dies, it cannot reproduce and become many. It will stay alone. It is not good for the man to be alone. I think those kinds of connections are supposed to be made. And so we've got this interesting tidbit as well. If you're reading along in the English, you're not going to notice a change here. Okay, here it goes. You ready? So God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, Adam, and he fashioned into a Adamah, a woman from Adam's side, that he had taken from the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. For this reason a man shall leave his wife, and the man and the woman were both naked." Blah, blah, okay? In English, all we see is man and woman, man and woman. In the Hebrew, when Eve is brought to Adam, he doesn't use the word Adam and Adamah, okay? He says, "This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called Isha, for she was taken out of Ish." Okay? Those are two different Hebrew words. Adamah, Isha, Adam, Ish. Completely two different words. They do not mean the same thing. So why do we translate them with the same English word? Oh, we put them in capitalized letters so that... No, there is something theological going on here. James Jordan also says that he thinks that it makes sense to associate this somehow with sacrificial terms of transformation. that Ish and Isha is related to the word for fire. And so he jokes when he talks about this that we have, you shall call her Flamette because she was taken out of flame. My point is that there is more going on in these stories than we are aware of because we only read on the surface and we don't know how deep and how far the rabbit hole goes. I don't have all of the answers. I'm saying the way that we normally read the scriptures causes me to ask questions. And I hope that it causes you to ask questions so that we can talk about these things and try to figure out what it is that this story is trying to teach us ultimately about who God is and what he requires of us and what he's doing in our lives. All right, well, there you go. This is For the Glory of God and Kings, reading the Bible for the first time again. And I am your host, Travis Finley. Until next time.